Hi, my name is Enda Murray, and I'm the director of the Irish Film Festival. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Chris Andrews, who co-wrote and directed Bring Them Down. Chris, the Falter wrote, you're very welcome to our Q&A.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us, Chris, a little about your own background. You're originally from Cumbria.
Yeah, I was born in Manchester and then moved back to Cumbria, where majority of my family lived when I was about 5 or 6. And yeah, I was brought up in Barrow-in-Furness, which is this kind of small kind of post-industrial town at the bottom of this beautiful landscape where they build submarines and battleships. And my family came over from Ireland to work in there, and you either work in the shipyard or in Manchester in the sort of like fitting and turning factories up there.
And how did you get into the film game? What's your background with film industry?
I didn't do well at school at all, and I came out and I was a labourer for a long time, but I was obsessed with film. I was obsessed with watching movies and sort of just sort of like consumed by. I'd read a lot around the making of movies, in libraries and stuff. There wasn't the internet then, um, but it wasn't something that you did if you came from Barrow in Furness, right? When people worked in, shit, it was like it could be a million miles away. It was just like if you mentioned it to anybody, then he's just like a pipe dream. He's just silly, get laughed out of the room. But then I was working for a bricklayer, and he had a little high 8 camera, and I made this little film around this building site that I was working on in my early 20s, and then I sent it into an art school, and they liked it. So I got a place to do a degree in film, um, where I sort of had to catch up with all the stuff that I'd failed at school and study film, and then I came out of that when I was sort of in my mid 20s, and got a job as a runner, and then on a British drama, and the loader crashed their car, and I was the only person who could load a mag of film that was on the crew. So I went on the floor, and I spent about 7 8 years on the floor working as a loader and then a focus puller and operator. And then I got really sick in my early 30s, and I couldn't do that anymore. I had like about 3 or 4 years of not being able to work, and I got bitten by a mosquito in Cambodia that gave me a brain disease, and so I was a bit of a mess. And I started writing through that process, and I wrote my first film, which is terrible, that no one's ever read, and I wrote another one which people liked, and then I wrote another one which people liked more and got me an agent. Then I did a master's in my late 30s, and then I've just been working as a writer since then, always with the intention of being a director. That's what I wanted to be. But it's up money if you wanted to make short films and stuff. Whereas I could write, I could make the film on paper, and it also meant that I could earn some money. So I've just been sort of driving these two cars forward, trying to get a movie going, whilst also sort of earning a living as a screenwriter.
Right. And tell us, Bring Them Down is a very impressive film. Can you tell us how the script came about? How did the idea of this film come into being?
Well, I was writing another film for with Creative England, which is a body which supports like early sort of filmmakers. And like after a few conversations, we realised that the film that I'd written was going to be too expensive. You couldn't get. It was like a £5 million film, and the maximum you could get was about 1.5 million for a debut feature in the UK. And so I was like kicking my heels trying to think of something else to write. And I was walking up in Cumbria in the Lake District with my partner at New Year, and I was just thinking about how unutilized this landscape is, like mountains and all this. It feels exotic to me, and it feels exotic cinematically. It isn't shown by British filmmakers, and so as I was walking, I was thinking, it's just be a beautiful place. You put a camera on it, everything looks amazing. And as we were talking about it, this shepherd walked up over the crest of a hill with his dog, and through this mist, and he felt like this sort of singular kind of Clint Eastwood figure. I was like, that's a really interesting character. And at the time, I was taking a lot of inspiration from the Bible. I was brought up in quite a religious family, both sort of kind of sectarian. On one side was Catholic, one Protestant, and um, so I was at church a lot, and I was taking Bible stories and just twisting them, tearing them open, and see what else I could find. And I just thought about the parable of the Good Shepherd, and what would happen if once he goes back up to find that lost soul with his saved souls at the bottom of the mountain. What if someone comes along and rustles those saved souls? So it was those things that came together, and then the idea of what they do to the sheep was something that was actually happening in the north of England at the time. There was gangs going out, and they were just cutting the hind legs off sheep and letting them bleed out in the field, and it felt incredibly barbaric. It felt like something out of a western, where you see like Jarmusch's film Dead Man, where they're shooting buffalo off the side of a train just for sport, and it had that sort of lack of humanity in it, and felt like a really good thing to sort of pull into the story and examine the themes of of who we are and our responsibility.
So I read an article in Variety which said you originally had Paul Mescal in mind for the part of Jack. What were the challenges you face in making a film like this?
I mean, like always, the challenge is casting. Casting has never been more important, especially if you're making a film that's going to cost a little bit of money. We never had enough money to make the film that was on the paper. We had to be really smart and think about how we have car chases and sheep and mountains. All that stuff is expensive because you're outside in the winter, and it's cold and it's wet. But getting cast attached at the level that we did really helped us in securing the budget that we did. So I was really lucky. Just before the pandemic, we had Tom Burke attached, and then during lockdown, Paul had read and really liked it, and so we were going to push forward with those guys, but we didn't have enough money to make the movie within the COVID restrictions, and time was just passing, and Paul was becoming more and more in demand. And Tom actually left first to go and do Mad Max movie, and then Paul left to do something else. I can't remember what it was. Um, but some of the agents had read at WME, and but Barry's someone that I've been obsessed with as an actor since I saw him in Love and Hate, and then 71. I thought he was like head and shoulders above everybody else. And Chris Abbott is one of my favorite actors in the world, and their agents had read, and they were on this list of people. And I was like, those guys, and Barry was a shoe-in. Big, he's like a national treasure in Ireland, but Chris is like from Connecticut. So, and he speaks, so mostly he speaks in Irish language. So it was a really big, I made that request and nobody laughed, and Chris was generous enough to. He loved the script, and he was generous enough to read, and shared it with my my dialect coach Paddy Cox and my casting director Julie Harkin, who were both Irish, and they were like, "Yeah, he's got a really good foundation," and then he just worked really hard to get the
I was
language and the accent.
I was really impressed with Chris Abbott because you hear so many bad accents, and I didn't actually know him, and so and I just assumed he was Irish, and then
Yeah,
it was possibly he did such a good job with the accent, but then I certainly didn't pick up with the Gaeilge. That he not only could he do an accent, but he could speak Irish as well with Colm Meaney. So he did a great job. Um, the film was originally going to be in England, but then you moved to Ireland. in terms of locations? Where was it? Where was it shot?
So we shot. I wanted to shoot it on the west coast around Panamera, but we just couldn't afford to put everybody up because we'd have there wasn't enough crew around Galway, and our stunts and our vehicles were all going to be coming from Dublin, and it and cameras too. So it just put too much pressure on. So we shot we shot for the we shot we used Connemara Irish, and but shot on the east coast, and we shot in Wicklow, in the Wicklow Mountains. The big mountain is Lugalore, which used to be owned by the Guinness family. It's owned by an Italian family now, I think. And then all up around Sally Gap, around that area.
Now, you mentioned about using your own experience in terms of some of the conflict. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I was interested in the portrayal of masculinity. Just what were you drawing on for that in the writing?
It was mostly my family. I was my dad was around till I was 5, and then he left. He died when I was 9, and I spent a lot of time moving between my grandparents, and like I say, one was Catholic and one was Protestant, and they desperately didn't like each other. Um, like would talk about fighting. My grandfathers wanted to fight each other, and so I was kind of brought up between this in this sort of like stuck between these two worlds, and one side of the family really liked me because I looked like my dad, and I felt like the other side didn't particularly like me because I looked like my dad, and um, so I was like I was felt like I was brought up with a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, and then coming from a sort of poor background, that you feel sort of like you haven't got any agency and mobility, and not doing well at school, and so that it just makes you more and more angry. And I felt like I'd inherited this from my grandfathers, and they hadn't shielded me from what they were feeling. They hadn't parented me properly, and so I was exploring that about this sort of the sins of the father, and what that does to their children, and the responsibility there. And as I was writing, I became a father myself, and was something that I like. It was my biggest fear, becoming a father, because I was like terrified about passing on all this that I'd inherited from them. So it was like plugging gaps, and I felt really constricted and tight, and anxious about it. And then I realized that was just going to cause more problems, and what I needed to do was just be myself, and love my children in a completely honest, and try hard to be patient, and try hard, all the things that are difficult when you're tired and you're working and kids are, and it was kind of revelation, and they that relationship I had with them, both my son came first and my daughter, really killed any of that sort of anger and frustration that was inside me. It was like the thing that I was scared of the most was the thing that liberated me.
What do you hope audiences take away uh, from the film?
Um, I hope that they take away. I mean, I hope that they have a really good ride. It's like it starts hard, and it doesn't. It's relentless and intense, purposefully. Um, but what I want people to take away in those last few moments is that it's never too late. And if we take responsibility for our own actions, we can really make a difference, and we can help other people around us, and help ourselves.
Um, are you working on anything at the moment that you could tell us?
Yeah, I'm writing. Can I tell you? No, I can't really. I'm not allowed yet because they haven't done and the things releases and stuff. But I've just finished writing a horror movie. I'm writing. I'm just about to start writing a kind of thriller horror with Film Forum Movie, and comedy, which is an adaptation of a blind boy boatman short story, who's this amazing Irish podcaster, and he's such a great. He's fantastic. So that's really good fun. That
Which
was for the
story is it?
BBC.
Oh no, you can't. Can you say which
I
story
can't tell
from?
you. I can't tell you
We're
yet. You
big
haven't seen
fans of
it.
Blind Boy.
No, he's amazing. He's amazing.
Horse
He's like,
outside.
yeah, yeah. He's just like, it just makes you. He's so incredibly intelligent and obsessive in detail. It's like it's a real like fun to work with him. Um, but yeah, if you check back with me as soon as I will, I'll let you know. Um, and then I'm hopefully is a film that I wrote a while ago, and we are out to cast, so we're hoping to shoot it in spring. But I'm not allowed to tell anybody about it, which is not useful, is it? Sorry.
Oh, so c'est la vie. Hey, just one last, like you kind of come from the camera department, but what kind of direction were you given to the DOP in terms of the look of the film?
I was really like, I had I have got this. My DP Nick is like, I love him. He's like, he feels very. We feel very similar in our taste and what we love, and also about how much we want to explore and experiment. Um, and he knows that I came from that background, but I didn't want to be. I wanted him to feel free. I didn't want him to, I didn't want to be overbearing. So I just spoke to him about the language that I wanted to use, which was when we start with Michael's character. It's very sort of traditional, still composed frames because he's free in this environment. And then it starts to track and dolly. And then when he gets to the field and he sees the massacre, it goes handheld. So you get this sense of untethering. And then when we start with Barry's story, that we get we start with handheld. It's then it tracks and dollies and then becomes static. So he's in prison. So we use the same language, but it has a different intention. And so that was the only thing that I spoke about. And we talked a lot about what the scenes meant, and then I like to give my actors a lot of space when they're blocking, and I turn around and Nick is always in the right place, just always like he's always instinctively where I would go. So it was a real sort of pleasure to have that relationship and that connection.
It's great to hear the back story and the thought that goes into producing a piece like this. Chris, congratulations again on a fantastic
Thank
film,
you.
and yeah, all the best in the future.
Cheers.
All the best.
Thanks, man. Cheers, Enda.